Today I wanted to do something different than the usual stuff. Today let's start with a simple question. It's basically in the title, so might as well go on, right? Who wants to live forever? There's no chance for us. It's already decided for us. But if your answer is yes, how would you like that to be? That you remain the same as you are, just stop aging and nothing happens till the collapse of the universe? Or something else like reverting back to your younger years and then start aging extremely slowly? If your answer was no, on the other hand, then what is your view on immortality in general? Should we even strive to achieve it? You can wait till the end of the video and then you can type your answers. I want to hear what your ideas and opinions are. But before we go any further, why don't you like the video? You already know it's gonna be good. And subscribe to my channel while you're at it. There are several different viewpoints when it comes to immortality. Some more scientific, while others a bit more religious or spiritual in nature. So I'll just briefly mention some, not all, and focus on the latest scientific ideas, and where it could eventually lead us, of course. So stick around till the end, you might just be surprised. First things first, we need to define what is immortality. And according to Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, the definition of immortality is as follows: a quality or state of being immortal. Which, if we look at the word immortal, means the following: an unending existence or lasting fame. Now this is quite an interesting definition. It was expected to mean something that does not end or is rather non-perishable in any way, shape or form. But what is interesting is that it also includes the lasting fame, meaning that something written or spoken about someone lasts through time. The first ever usage of the word immortal or immortality comes from 14th century. And by that I mean the aforementioned definition, of course. But the idea that something just doesn't end is as old as the language itself. All the way from the ancient Persian cultures to Greek philosophers and modern anthropologists. Its definition just varied through different cultures and climates. But the idea that we are immortalized through what someone writes or speaks about us is indeed true. Alexander the Great, a Macedonian who conquered everything as far as the Indian subcontinent. Socrates, a great philosopher who was credited as the founder of modern Western philosophy. Isaac Newton, who not only contributed by founding the basics of universal gravitation, but also making heavy strides in mathematics. Beethoven and Mozart, who reshaped the music as we know it. And we all know that through texts and storytelling. So, if we look at it through the usage of language, you could make an argument that we are already immortal, to a certain degree, of course. Body and soul or consciousness disappear and only writings is what's left of us. But that is not quite what interests me, so we will move on. Now let's look at philosophical and religious outlook on immortality, because in most cases it has a rather similar idea of mind, or rather soul, being eternal and far exceeding the capabilities of our mortal bodies. The idea that one part of us is truly immortal and continues to live on, so to speak, after our body's decomposition, but that is only one part of us. In Christianity we lost our immortality when Adam and Eve committed the first sin and were banished from Eden. But there is a notion that that is not the permanent state. The soul lives on and continues on its own journey to heaven or hell respectively. But here we have a nice twist on the idea of immortality. Resurrection. Jesus resurrected himself, flesh and bones together, after he was killed. The idea of resurrection gives us another spin on immortality. What if we die, but then again come back to life like nothing happened? Does that count? I'd say it does, but depends on what comes back to life. So there are two instances of truly immortal humans in Christianity. First one being Cartaphilus and second one being Longinus, who were cursed with immortality for their sins. In Quran there is a mention of immortal figure by the name of Idris, a prophet who made the divine revelations through several books. What is interesting about him is that he did not physically die, but was rather taken to the heaven. In Judaism, the stance is almost identical regarding the immortality of the soul, and in some instances resurrections are also mentioned, but mostly as an end result that happens when the Messiah arrives. Hinduism, all the same, the immortal soul and the perishable body. Though much like Christianity, there are instances of immortality being mentioned, and in some cases quite literally achievable. The most notable and recent one being in 1874, when an Indian Tamil saint known as Valalar claimed to have reached immortality and subsequently disappeared completely from within a locked room. Zoroastrianism is probably the first time where we see the mentioning of soul being the immortal part of the human body, which is not surprising. It is widely believed that Zoroastrianism hugely influenced the newer Abrahamic religions. The philosophical standpoint on immortality was much more diverse. For instance, Plato was the one who did preach that soul is immortal, and he even tried to prove it. The Islamic philosopher Avicenna had the same idea as Plato of the immortality of soul, while others like Aristotle did not align with such ideas, mainly because in his mind body and soul cannot live without each other. On the other hand, the Epicureans thought that there is nothing after death, no consciousness, and therefore nothing to be afraid of. Now those will be the three main viewpoints of Greek philosophers on the idea of immortality, and they would subsequently shape all the other ideas into one of the above mentioned camps. But there is one rather interesting idea proposed by Blaise Pascal, a French mathematician and philosopher, who said something along the lines of the following: regardless of whether you are a believer or a non-believer, believing in the God of Christianity should be done on the practical grounds at the very least. That is from the simple fact that the one who believes in it has everything to gain if he is right and nothing to lose if he is wrong, while the one who doesn't believe in the God has everything to lose if he is wrong and nothing to gain if he is right. Quite an interesting point there. Better to be practical and cover all your bases, cause if shit hits the fan, you'll at least have some options. I bet you that's how agnostics came to be. Like, I'm not saying there's something or nothing up there watching us, but if he is there and we're all doomed, then I do believe in him. On the other hand, if there was no God, I didn't say nothing. Now let's look at the scientific options and a scientific viewpoint on the idea of immortality. Truth be told, this is the main reason why this video was being made in the first place. I just had to do that deep and thorough explanation at the first. But before we could even achieve immortality, science has to overcome several different hurdles, which are causes of death, from aging, from diseases, from environmental change, and from various types of trauma. Nanotechnology could help with at least one or two of these hurdles. If we could create a nanorobots on the scale of 100th of a nanometer, they could theoretically travel to our bloodstream and repair different cells that are in need of repair. Also, if there are enough of these nanorobots, they could then again repair our bodies from even the most severe of traumas, be it piercing wounds or a blunt force. There is also the option of using cryonics to preserve our bodies long enough for future technology to develop to the point so that we could somehow be revived or rejuvenated. During the late 60s and 70s it boomed. Stopping death just mere seconds before it happened was quite appealing to many people at the time, though it wasn't without any controversies or difficulties. In fact, the first believers in cryonics and willing participants almost all died. Today cryonics is still going on and going strong. In fact, the most methods are improved, but the costs of preparing and storing the body can go up to $200,000. But if we were able to just delete aging from that equation, we could then theoretically reach what is known as biological immortality, meaning the absence of aging, that our cells would reach some point where they would just stop aging and continue to live on. There are 4 species in the world that are biologically immortal, but are still susceptible to dying, even if you exclude the aging from death. First one being the bacteria. No surprise there, they just divide themselves as much as needed, the older cells becoming smaller and weaker, more prone to death, while the newer, younger cells, daughter cells, become stronger and bigger. Next one being bristlecone pine trees. That's right, it's a goddamn tree, going from a microscopic organism to a huge ass tree in a matter of seconds. Though it is not completely confirmed, they are speculated to be at least immortal. The oldest living sample today is around 5,000 years old, located somewhere in Inyo County in Eastern California, in an undisclosed location for obvious reasons. Funnily enough, they named him Methuselah, which is quite appropriate since even in the Bible the Methuselah was the oldest living human at that time, dying at the young age of 969. I think the next one would be the Queen Elizabeth, but I'm not so sure. Now we are going to do some more interesting species. The next in line is Hydra. I know, what a scary sounding name, and it's connected to immortality. I wonder how does it look? Like this. It looks just like this. They are small freshwater predators. Now what do they do, these skeletal invertebrates, is since they are mostly made out of stem cells, and we know that stem cells divide to make the new and replace the old cells, on and on in a constant circle. And this constant circle of new and fresh stem cells keep our body here completely rejuvenated and forever young. Now if you need to refresh your memory on the stem cells, you can watch my video about lab-grown brains and their eyes. But just because it can do that does not mean that we as humans would be able to replicate the same thing. For one, we are way more complex with our bodies in comparison to a 0.4 inches long creature. We can't just replace our cells willy-nilly like the Hydra does. Once our cell is committed to a certain function, it loses its ability to reproduce and starts to age slowly. And for the record, a recent study in 2021 published in journal Nature Communications found out that maximum life expectancy of humans is between 120 to 150 years. After that, our bodies lose all resilience, and to bridge that we would somehow need to reach that biological immortality. And now let's look at the last and the most important species that is immortal, and the reason why I'm bringing this whole idea of immortality in the first place. Turitopsis dorni, the immortal jellyfish. I kid you not, that's the full name of the creature. This tiny jellyfish is usually found in Mediterranean Sea and around Japan, but it's not unusual to notice them all around the world. Or rather, it would be strange to notice them since they are so small. What? Going around looking for jellyfish? Wanna get stung by one so someone gets to urinate on your wound? You sick freak. So, how are they immortal? Well, they are basically able to revert back to the stage before sexual maturity, after reaching adulthood. And there is basically no limit on how many times they can reproduce this. They begin as larvae, planula as it is called, from a fertilized egg. Then they drop down to the ocean floor, where they further continue as a colony of polyps. From that point on they produce medusae, what we call jellyfish, which grow up somewhere to 0.18 inches long. Around 90 tentacles drop from a rather translucent bell, and in the center is a bright red stomach. Nothing remarkable at the first sight, but this little bugger here is able to achieve something that is called transdifferentiation. Now that is the process that is of particular interest to scientists, and the one that could change how we view cell and cell regeneration. Undergoing this transdifferentiation, an adult jellyfish is able to repurpose any cell in its body to a totally different specialized cell. Now if you've been paying a close attention, This is closely related to a stem cell research. This could further help scientists to replace damaged cells from various diseases with new ones. But the thing is, this process that happens within jellyfish does not require any stem cells. That's right, these non-stem cells are quite interesting right now because they act like stem cells, even though they are not. The researchers led by scientist Shin Kubota are making huge strides in regenerative medicine just as we speak. So in a sense, this thing can't starve. It will simply just turn on the transdifferentiation and revert back to the immature form, and thus lose the sense of starvation in the process. Now how does that look? In an essence, their tentacles revert back into that translucent bell, while their whole body shrinks down and drops onto the ocean floor, where the process begins again at the stage of larva. Keep in mind, they are called immortal, but they are not essentially immortal. They can still die from predators like sea slugs, turtles and other fish. Also, if they end up in an unwelcoming environment, that could also lead to their imminent death. Basically, they can die, but only from the external sources, from what is known about them so far. So this little thing here could lead us to a technical, or rather biological immortality, more than any of the previously stated methods and examples. But still, even with this, we are far from achieving anything close to longevity, let alone immortality. Lastly, it is worth mentioning that within the field of futuristic studies, or within the circle of futurists, there are certain ideas that could lead to a not so much a biological immortality as much as technological immortality. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, since futurists are mostly concerned how we as a human race will adapt to a future and technology, their ideas of immortality does not necessarily include our biological bodies. One idea is to upload our mind or consciousness onto a computer and then somewhere down the line transfer that said mind or consciousness into an organic or inorganic body, depending on what's available. Now, this is nothing new and strange. There are several movies that delve into this topic specifically, what it means to be human. A few that come immediately to mind are Blade Runner and Ghost in the Shell. Both quite good, might I add. Another one of their ideas which connects to this one is rather, why download it to a body? Why not put it into a virtual reality? After our human body dies, our avatar would be able to learn and further develop. Now, this is more aligned with the idea of transhumanism, of course, but still, you get it, right? And the last idea concerning somewhat technical or technological immortality is related to cybernetics, simply meaning that we would be able to replace our human body parts or organs with robotic body parts and thus increase our lifespan indefinitely. You've probably seen RoboCop, so there you go. That could ultimately be our future. Now, with all that being said and done, who knows if and when we would ever be able to reach immortality. But the research into the immortal jellyfish could shed some light into the right direction. Not necessarily the true meaning of immortality, but some form of life extension is probably guaranteed at this point. Now, truth be told, if we as human race got to a point of never being able to die, it would draw a totally new problems from a sociological standpoint to a ethical one. But be that as it may, now let's get back to the question. Do you want to live forever? Anyway, that's it for me for today. And I'll see you in a couple of days, of course. Hopefully, at least. In the meantime, why don't you like the video and subscribe if you already haven't? It would mean a lot to me. Anyway, see ya!